That was the only thing that was available to us. Vacuum devices came later, venous constriction rigs, and Muse, which is transurethral alprostadil. This is what we use in piperacillin injections at the base of the penis, but it's painful. There can be extravasation, and there is corporal fibrosis. So it's been given up more or less. Dropout rate is very high. This is Muse that's been used. There's a pellet here which goes inside the urethra. And this is from England. When I was using it, one of the patients came back and said, "Doc, give me anything but this." I said, "What?" He said, "I was sitting with my neighbor the other night, and I used the pellet, but nothing happened." So I said, "You shouldn't be doing that anyway with your neighbor." But the bottom line is that it is very unpredictable. Sometimes the erection can occur, sometimes the absorption is not proper, and then we have a problem. Vacuum device is you insert the penis into this thing, and now there are electrical gadgets available. You press the button, and it creates a vacuum, and the blood gushes in, and then you put rings around. I spent some time in casualty. This is again in UK, taking a ring out because the man, I asked him, what happened? Well, he said, "Well, we thought we'll go for a second round, but I fell asleep." And by the morning, his penis was black and blue. So we had to get the woodcutter's saw to cut it through. So those are the problems, even in an advanced country like England, what to talk of India. Cumbersome, inadequate vacuum and constriction ring problems. Surgical procedures for erectile dysfunction. Revascularization has been more or less given up. And as I said, surgical ligation of penile veins, reported success rate is 40%, but however, our series has approaches 100% because of the improved criteria of selection. It's not me, it's the criteria of selection. And last but not the least, let us not forget penile prosthesis, which is a very useful instrument. I once had a patient who was on the brink of divorce 2 years down the line, and I put an implant in him and called him, as I do, 6 months later, and he pulled his chair back and stood up in the national anthem pose and gave me a lecture for 5 minutes, how his life has changed, how he feels like a man again, how he feels like working again, and how he is more interested in life again. So don't forget that. Keep it in the back of the mind. It is a panacea for those who can't do it. Penile implants, very shortly, I'll go over the two types of penile implants. This is semi-rigid. Front part is rigid. The rear part is rigid. And in between is a hinge on which the penis goes up and down. This is all inserted into the corpora cavernosa. This is a Rolls-Royce. This is a 3-piece penile implant. And this is a 2-piece. The difference between 2-piece and 3-piece is just this bulb that's there. This gives a harder and firmer erection. But 2-piece is also pretty good. And you insert these rods into the corpora cavernosa. You keep the button in between the testes so that the husband or the wife can switch it on. Again, I'm reminded from my clinical experience about one case where as I called them after 6 months, I called this couple back. And I said, "Well, Mr. Bloggs, how are you?" He said, "I'm fine, absolutely fine, but..." I said, "Yes, go on." But I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "The button is always in my wife's hand. Anytime she wants, she fix it open. And the poor man has to perform." Nothing is perfect in life. This is a 3-piece. So what is recent in erectile dysfunction? ED equals to ED. Now I must mention about this because I can see Dr. H.K. Chopra sitting here in the front row. ED, the first one is erectile dysfunction. Second one is endothelial dysfunction. And at last, we've been trying to match up to the cardiologist but couldn't do up till now. But now we have managed to do it. We have linked the penis to the heart. The same vessels are lined by the same endothelium in the penis as in the heart. The difference is that the penile vessels are 1 to 2 millimeters in size, and the coronary ones are 3 to 4 millimeters in size. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's just common sense to know that 1 to 2 millimeters will block first than 3 to 4 millimeters one. Therefore, we've got a new tool. You ask the patient the history of erectile dysfunction, and if he's got other cardiovascular risk factors, then please go ahead and do a cardiovascular study. Complete study in investigations and everything. He may have an impending MI and you may prevent an MI in a patient with erectile dysfunction. I'm looking forward to the day when Dr. Chopra takes the pants down of a patient and says, instead of taking a stethoscope, feels the penis and says, well, you've got a 2-vessel disease, you've got a 3-vessel disease. You're laughing, but maybe very soon that will come true. Now, I was recently at the SHAPE, a forum which is the International Forum for Sexual Dysfunction, not my dysfunction, but sexual dysfunction patients forum. And we were discussing about predictors of erectile dysfunction and coronary artery disease. You may have calculators available. Sit in your office and just key in the figures and you know whether this patient is going to get erectile dysfunction or not, or whether this erectile dysfunction patient is going to get coronary artery disease or not. This is on the horizon. Chewable Viagra. Here I can get a glass of water, but in the West, it's easier to get whiskey or alcohol than to get water. And there have been desperate situations where, try as hard as a patient might, he can't swallow the Viagra and he missed an opportunity. So they came out with chewable Viagras. You can sit in the car and just keep chewing it and you're all right. And of course, the superior quality implants are now available. What I want to emphasize here is that it's a holistic approach that one needs. It's men's health. It is not sexual health. Because erectile dysfunction is maybe a result of diabetes, hypertension, of coronary artery disease. Therefore, if you get a patient of erectile dysfunction, always look to the other parts of the human body and not just treat it in isolation. Therefore, the therapy of sexual dysfunction has to be holistic in nature. Evaluation of any risk factors, psychological treatment. Now, this is very difficult. I had one gentleman from Punjab, Sadaji, excuse me, who went to Hong Kong. 10 minutes, said the lady, who says, "Ki farak penda hai?" She doesn't have a watch. I'll carry on. Now, this gentleman from Amritsar was a robust man. He would take 10 minutes just to start. Little did he know that this woman had a bell under the bed. And in his own words, "Oh dina aaj ka dina talli baj jandi hai." Very difficult to control. Medical treatment, hormonal treatment, surgical treatment. I'll skip female sexual dysfunction and I'll go straight to male infertility. 5 minutes on that, sir. Now, this is a slide I used to talk about in male infertility. Notice the idiopathic. We didn't know what it was all about, and Dr. Anup here will second that with me. Is it really idiopathic? With recent advances, we are now able to find out that genetic, environmental, reactive, oxidative species, nutritional, micronutrient deficiency, they can all be involved in the so-called idiopathic group. And the latest interest is in micronutrients, because this is easy. This is in the diet. We can give pills, and then if we can get a better quality semen, it's much better. I've seen young men cry in front of me, and that's not a pretty sight, because they can't father a child. And therefore, even in this populous country like India, we have to think of the human being as well. Role of micronutrients, nutritional factors, which give energy to the sperm, and free radical scavengers, which actually prevent the sperm from being destroyed. So there are two mechanisms which work. One is to boost up the energy of the sperm, and the other one is to prevent it from destruction. The ones that give energy are L-carnitine, CoQ10, zinc, arginine, vitamin B12, and free radical scavengers are lycopene, vitamin C, E, glutathione, and selenium. CoQ10 is found mostly in fish and meat, and therefore it's a diet which non-vegetarians take.